At midnight on July 10, 2023, on a quiet street corner in Whiting, Wisconsin, a Portage County deputy sheriff was silently conducting a speed monitoring operation. Suddenly, a laser light scanned a white car speeding towards him at 40 miles per hour, exceeding the 25 miles per hour speed limit. Not only did the car violate the speed limit, but it also carried a long list of issues: a cracked windshield, a malfunctioning brake light, and an expired license plate. When the car was asked to pull over, behind the wheel was Nicole, a woman with a worried expression and an untold complicated story. Was this just a routine traffic violation, or was there something mysterious lurking behind it? Nicole's car was truly a traffic masterpiece, and if there were an award for the worst car, this one would surely win the championship. Just looking at the cracked windshield, you'd think it had just survived a fierce battle, maybe between Nicole and a deer. The windshield wasn't just cracked in one spot. It was cracked in every direction, from one place to another, resembling an abstract art piece no one could comprehend. If anyone asked Nicole about the windshield, she might proudly say, "It's part of my traffic art collection." Then there was the passenger side brake light, a piece of equipment that could be described as a declaration of non-cooperation. Not just broken, the brake light seemed to be staging a rebellion, refusing to light up when needed. It was as if this car had entered a competition for which brake light will refuse to function the longest, and clearly won first place. If you were another driver on the road, you might wonder if this car could feature in an action movie, where neglected brake lights and safety were forgotten. And let's not forget Nicole's registration, expired for who knows how long. It was a perfect metaphor for Nicole's car. Everything was foggy, unclear, as if the registration had withdrawn from the game long ago, leaving Nicole to face the consequences. This car probably didn't need valid paperwork because it lived in its own world, where everything was blurry and didn't follow the rules. Overall, Nicole's car was like a bold statement: "I dare you to catch me." Surely, if there were a rebel car contest on the streets, this car would be the undisputed winner, not because it was fast or powerful, but because it always found a way to break every rule and challenge every limit. The sheriff, with the patience and calm of an old watchmaker, didn't rush to stop Nicole's car. It seemed he had learned to remain calm through countless tense situations, because if you were a police officer facing Nicole's car, you'd need more than just a little patience. He probably thought, "Now's the time to test my patience." And so, one of the day's most intriguing traffic stories officially began. When Nicole stopped her car, the first look at it was like witnessing a memorable traffic art piece. With so many violations, Nicole had practically turned her car into a mobile reprimand, like this car was a storage space for every offense the traffic law system could attribute. Expired registration, non-cooperating brake light, cracked windshield. It seemed this car wasn't just neglected but also showed no respect for any traffic regulations. Surely, if this car could speak, it would say, "I'm not even trying, I just want attention." And the funniest part was that all these issues occurred on a white car. White, typically considered a symbol of innocence, now became a sarcastic choice. Nicole probably thought that with this color, her car could blend in with innocence, but in reality, it only highlighted the contrast between the pure exterior and the interior full of violations. This car was like a poisoned apple, clean on the outside, yet hiding countless risks and mistakes inside. That white color, which seemed harmless, now added to the irony of the situation. Another amusing thought was that if Nicole's car were featured in a crime film, it might be the only innocent car among all the vehicles. It seemed to mock traffic regulations, both reckless and pure, to the point that it made everyone's jaw drop. And from the absurdity of this situation, the contrast between the pure white color and the blatant violations created a funny and sarcastic picture, reflecting the ironic truth. Sometimes, innocence is just a facade to hide actions that are completely contrary. Nicole couldn't hide her disappointment, and the expression on her face was no different from someone just asked whether they wanted to upgrade their car insurance. An expression mixed with confusion, discomfort, and a hint of outrage. It seemed that the whole world was focusing on her just because of a few trivial traffic issues, and perhaps, in her mind, traffic violations were just a terrible joke that life decided to play on her. She looked at the sheriff with a disheartened gaze and bluntly shared, "I feel like a moving billboard for traffic tickets." Nicole's words were not only funny but also full of sarcasm. It turned out, her car wasn't just a mode of transport, but a perfect traffic invention to remind everyone of the mistakes made in breaking the rules, a giant advertisement for tickets. Nicole kept citing reasons about taking care of her grandparents, a job she considered noble and worthwhile. But even that nobility wasn't enough to stop her from being chased by traffic regulations. Looking at her, one could feel the disappointment deep from her heart, as though life had laid out devious traps of injustice for her. And, unable to hold it in, Nicole sighed as though that sigh could release all the tension. But perhaps it only managed to slightly shake her cracked windshield, not just because the windshield had endured too many hits along the way, but because that sigh probably contained all her helplessness and exhaustion. That sigh actually created a humorous yet ironic image. The cracked windshield, which had long stopped being a reliable object, became a supporting actor in this scene, as if it were the only one who understood Nicole's struggles and helplessness. In fact, her sigh seemed like a confession of her exhaustion, to the point where she no longer had the energy to worry about small details like the car registration or brake lights. Meanwhile, the traffic violations continued to torment her, creating a humorous contrast between her suffering and the relentless list of violations, as though it were a cruel joke from the legal system. With each word, action, and expression, Nicole not only portrayed her disappointment but also created a satirical image of how sometimes life shows no mercy, no matter how busy or noble your work may be. Her story was a clear example of how, despite all the effort and reasonable excuses, the regulations are always ready to jump at you, regardless of what you're doing or the situation you're in. As for the sheriff, he seemed to be so used to these heated interactions that Nicole's unexpected cooperation caught him off guard. Normally, he'd be prepared for a fiery rebuttal that could turn a traffic stop into an endless logical battle, but this time was different. The atmosphere now felt like an English tea time, elegant, orderly, and full of refinement, a sharp contrast to the tense situations he was used to facing. The sheriff, perhaps still recovering from this unexpected change, remarked half-jokingly, "It's interesting to see you act like a model citizen." His words were both humorous and sharp, like a compliment hidden with sarcasm, comparing Nicole's attitude today to previous encounters. With that remark, the sheriff expressed some surprise and a bit of self-mockery. "We had riot shields ready, but it looks like we don't need them today," he continued, as if he had anticipated a tense scenario he had to prepare for, but now everything was passing by too smoothly. This wasn't just a humorous comment, but also a reflection on the harshness of a police officer's job, where they have to always be ready to face unexpected situations. This sheriff wasn't just responding to a traffic situation, but facing a change in the script he was familiar with. And while Nicole might feel like she was in a scriptless play, the sheriff felt like he had become an actor in an unpredictable comedy. This only added to the humor and sarcasm of the situation. Both characters, despite seeming opposites, had their unique moments in this situation. Nicole, who usually clashed with police officers, today became a model of cooperation, while the sheriff, who had prepared for a battle, was surprised by Nicole's lack of argument. This story wasn't just entertaining, but also made people realize a simple truth. Life can change suddenly, and the situations we think we know can become humorous, unpredictable moments. Nicole, with an absent expression as if she just won the traffic fine jackpot, shrugged nonchalantly, as if she had just walked out of a beauty contest with no emotion. "I'm tired, arguing won't change anything," she said, her tone mixing frustration with a hint of humor, as if she were so used to being fined that she saw it as just another routine. "At least this time, you look more decent than those guys hiding behind the gas station waiting to catch me buying milk," she continued, her words hitting sarcastically at the traffic heroes she had encountered before. Nicole's statement was not just a humorous critique, but also a sharp criticism of the police officers she had encountered, those who, as she described, hide behind the gas station to hunt for violations. That image is vivid and humorous, as if she were describing a bust for unripened grain in a peaceful setting where no one expects the harvester to appear. She compared the officers to those hiding behind the gas station, a phrase that is not only funny but also heavily sarcastic, emphasizing that these people only act when they can hunt a target, rather than being proactive and fair in their duties. Nicole even highlighted the kindness of the current officer, as if this were the first time she had encountered someone performing their job in the true spirit of it. This officer seemed to have removed, at least to some extent, the negative image Nicole had developed about the police officers she usually met, who could resemble strange traffic cops from cartoons. Her words were not only a humorous critique but also reflected her frustration, a sense that her traffic violations were being treated as the main dish for the officers rather than as issues to be solved. In this context, Nicole was not only acknowledging her own powerlessness but also creating a stage to criticize those who made her life more complicated. Her statement acted like a covert weapon, making the listener laugh, but also prompting them to think about the deeper meaning behind the humor. Could it be that sometimes traffic inspectors are too focused on punishing violators instead of genuinely helping them improve? Her words were sharp, funny, but also deeply reflective of a system that sometimes lacks fairness and humanity in its approach. The officer smiled, as if he were used to such humorous but serious situations, and acknowledged Nicole's unexpected cooperation. However, he didn't forget to add a gentle reminder, yet also cautious. No matter how straightforward and open Nicole was, not every traffic violation could be erased with a smile or a charitable act. Just consider this a tuition fee for a practical traffic course, he said, his tone a mix of seriousness and humor, as if delivering a lecture on traffic safety in a special class, one that isn't paid for with money, but with a fine ticket. This reminder wasn't just a warning. It was a subtle explanation that traffic violations couldn't be easily excused by personal reasons or noble deeds, like charity work. The officer's words were a lesson everyone had to understand. Although Nicole may care for her grandparents, a job that might make someone feel entitled to forgiveness for any wrongdoing, traffic law doesn't accept such exemptions. Everyone must take responsibility for their actions, whether they are kind-hearted or not. The way the officer phrased his point became even funnier when he compared the tuition fee to a practical traffic course. Except this course didn't have a teacher, no tests, just fine tickets, money to be paid, and points deducted from the driving record. And more importantly, the pricey tuition couldn't be paid with good deeds or noble actions, but only by changing behavior, from vehicle maintenance to obeying traffic rules. With a slight smile, the officer skillfully reminded Nicole that in the world of traffic, no one can learn by cheating or bypassing rules, even if it's for a good cause. The price to pay, no matter how expensive or uncomfortable, is an essential part of every driver's growth process. The officer, like a patient teacher correcting homework, began listing Nicole's violations in a steady but sharp tone. First, not wearing a seatbelt. This is a basic mistake, like forgetting to eat breakfast but expecting to do well in class. Nicole smiled awkwardly, trying to justify herself. I always make my son wear his seatbelt, but I just don't get used to it. Not used to wearing a seatbelt? The officer raised an eyebrow. That excuse is on par with saying you're not used to using the handbrake when parking on a slope. It doesn't help in practice. As he moved to a more serious offense, driving with a suspended license, the officer tried to keep a serious face, but couldn't hide the sarcasm in his voice. Nicole, this is the fourth time. If this violation were a movie, the fourth part would definitely only air on cable TV. Nicole nodded, admitting that she was too familiar with being the star of this ongoing series. However, the officer surprised her by declaring that he would selectively issue the fines, like a chef choosing only the finest spices for a dish. I won't write tickets for every violation, only the lighter ones like not wearing the seatbelt and lacking insurance, things that won't impact your driving record too much. But the driving with a suspended license? Sorry, I can't overlook that one. Nicole, with a face that looked like she had just heard about a 90% discount that only applied after she ran out of money, smiled crookedly. Thanks for considering it. The officer shrugged, writing the ticket as he spoke. I try to make everything as easy as possible. But Nicole, if you don't want to see me around often, just obey the traffic laws. It sounds simple, but it seems like the hardest thing you've ever tried to do. The officer, with a sharp yet compassionate look, began his lecture like a professor teaching citizen responsibility in traffic. He raised his hand as if holding chalk to write on an imaginary board. "Nicole, driving without a license is not just breaking the law. It's like trying to skate on an oily kitchen floor. Yes, you may think you're skilled, but the risk of an accident is unavoidable." Nicole, sitting in the car with a face as if she had just been scolded by her parents for poor test results, forced a tired smile. "I know, officer. I'm doing my best to take care of this. There's just so much to handle." The officer interrupted with a fake sympathetic look. "Oh, I understand. So much to deal with, right? Like opening the mailbox to get a notice from the DMV, then just signing a few papers? Quite a monumental task." Nicole smiled awkwardly, explaining further, "I'm trying to get a professional license so I can drive to work and take care of my grandparents." "A professional license, huh?" The officer nodded, his eyes gleaming with sarcasm. "I have to admit, that's an encouraging step. But Nicole, a professional license isn't magic. It won't keep you from having an accident, and it won't make your car stop automatically at a stop sign." Nicole nodded quickly, as if agreeing with anything just to end the lecture. But the officer, clearly deep into his teacher role, continued, "You know, if an accident happens and you don't have a valid license, it's not just you who'll have problems. The insurance system won't cover you either. That's when you'll have to choose between selling your car or selling your future." Nicole sighed, thanking the officer for his sincere advice, but in her head, she was likely wondering how to escape this long-winded lecture. The officer finally wrapped up his lesson with a conclusion. "Think of it this way, Nicole, a driver's license isn't a luxury. It's your ticket into the legal world of traffic. You don't want to be left outside the door forever, right?" Nicole forced a smile and replied, "No, officer. I promise I'll try harder." With a nod of understanding, the officer let her go, leaving her with a headache over the professional license and a free 10-minute traffic lesson. After completing his lengthy lecture on civic responsibility, the officer moved on to the more serious task, listing Nicole's traffic record. In a calm tone, he began, "All right, Nicole, here's what we have today. I'm going to give you some warnings to help you improve this situation without damaging your driving record too much." Nicole looked at the officer with a hopeful expression, but her worry grew as he pulled out a thick stack of papers. "First," he said, "we have a warning for speeding. 40 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. Not terrible, but you exceeded the limit with enthusiasm." She squinted, as if about to protest but unable to argue. The officer continued, "Next, the cracked windshield. I'm guessing that's not retro style, right? Also, your brake lights aren't working. That's like sending a guess-what signal to the driver behind you." Nicole sighed, giving a forced smile. "I know, officer. I'll get it fixed soon." "Oh, but that's not all," the officer said, his face like a chef unveiling a special dish. "You'll be receiving some fines, totaling over $400, including driving without proof of insurance, not wearing your seatbelt, and operating the car with a revoked license." Nicole, trying to keep her composure, grimaced. "Only $400? I thought you'd add driving a car that's about to lose its wheels to the list." The officer laughed, responding, "I think I've been kind enough not to ticket you for that. But think of this amount as an investment in future improvement. A kind of maintenance package to keep you and everyone else safer on the road." Nicole nodded, trying to show gratitude. But inside, she was undoubtedly calculating whether she should sell the old car or a kidney to cover the fines. As the officer handed her the final ticket, he added with a half-smile, "Nicole, remember, nothing in life is free, not even this traffic lesson." With the fine in hand and fatigue in her mind, Nicole left, carrying with her a sarcastic reminder that life on the road was just as expensive as maintaining a wrecked car. When the story was retold, the number of 30 driving violations without a license since 2007 emerged as a feat if traffic violations were a sport, Nicole would surely have won a gold medal in the first Olympic Games and continued to break her own world record every year. With over $5,000 in fines, Nicole had not only made a generous contribution to the local budget, but had also become a loyal customer of the traffic violation processing system. The police may have grown so accustomed to seeing her on the daily list that they might have created a special shortcut in the system to process her violations faster. One could imagine Nicole answering her friend's questions. $5,000 in fines? No big deal. I see it as a long-term investment in my love for free driving. This was not just a story of violations, but the story of a woman determined not to let trivial laws get in her way. No license. No problem. Fines. Just numbers. Nicole had turned getting fined into a part of her lifestyle, as if it were an annual subscription to continue enjoying life on the road. Perhaps, Nicole even kept trophies for each fine, like war spoils in her journey. A box full of tickets, neatly stacked, labeled, Driving Achievements 2007 to 2023. However, the big question remains, how could she manage to pay off these fines? Perhaps Nicole has invented a way to repurpose the tickets, using them as gift wrap, scrap paper, or even hanging them as artwork in her living room. In any case, Nicole's story is a vivid testament to her perseverance in not giving up on what she loves, even if it leaves her broke. And in some ways, that's truly admirable, isn't it? The officer in this situation wasn't just a law enforcer, but also an accidental driving instructor. He skillfully emphasized his educational role, as if holding a free driving class right on the spot. Perhaps he had prepared his lecture beforehand. When you drive without a license, you not only compromise your own safety but also make everyone in the neighborhood nervous. Explaining traffic violations in such a friendly manner, it could be said that this officer was doing a noble job, not only protecting public safety but also patiently teaching the basic traffic lessons many need to relearn, especially driving artists like Nicole. If he were a teacher, he might note in his roll call, Nicole, a diligent student, still needs to improve law-abiding skills. As for Nicole, she might be smiling inwardly, knowing that, no matter what, these educational words couldn't change one simple fact. She would likely continue to violate the law, and probably continue to be educated this way. Nicole's respectful attitude could be understood as silently enduring, without protest, because she knows that every explanation from the officer is just a speech that can't alter the main script. A new batch of fines will appear, and she'll continue to be the student in the next encounters. The officer may see himself as a companion in Nicole's learning journey, but in reality, this might be the only time he actually lectures her, at least before she speeds off like a race car, leaving all the advice behind. The detail of the axe in Nicole's car opens up an interesting discussion about personal freedom and quirky preferences. While many might see the axe as an impractical tool to carry in a car, Nicole views it as an essential part of her personal collection. She may not be a professional hunter or an outdoor enthusiast, but when asked why she carries the axe, she confidently responds, "It's my right." That's it. You don't need to ask any further. It's her right to carry the axe, and no one can criticize her for it. Of course, a person carrying an axe in their car might make many wonder about its real purpose. Is Nicole preparing for a forest adventure, or is it simply a just-in-case tool for emergencies where she might need self-defense? Certainly, the axe is an essential element in her survival strategy on the streets. If anyone annoys her, one simple move, and the axe will handle everything. We can easily imagine the scene. The officer standing outside the car, looking inside, not only seeing traffic violations but also a weapon that could make anyone stop and think about safety. But instead of panicking, Nicole simply humorously explains, "It's my right." She makes sure to emphasize that she is absolutely allowed to carry the axe, and truly, she is exercising her personal freedom, one of the basic rights that everyone can have, even though no one is really sure if carrying an axe counts as basic. Though a bit odd and somewhat ridiculous, this answer makes people laugh. In her eyes, everything can be explained in her own unique way, and the axe is a perfect example of her incredibly creative approach to personal rights. Nicole's situation, with her traffic violations and particularly the axe in her car, though surprising and even humorous, reflects part of the complexity of modern society, where personal rights are sometimes abused or misunderstood. The story isn't just about a woman committing traffic violations, but also about how we understand and protect personal rights, even if they may not always seem entirely reasonable to others. Nicole has demonstrated a creative response in explaining the acts as "my right," which raises an interesting question about the limits of personal freedom and the decisions we make. The lesson here isn't just about the seriousness of the law in handling violations, but also about the need for individuals to carefully consider their actions and fully understand the responsibilities that come with them. Along with that, this story serves as a reminder that sometimes carelessness and poor decisions can lead to awkward or laughable situations. Always be aware of your actions and try to resolve issues rationally, instead of taking things too far, as Nicole did.